Hello and welcome. I'm Sophie, Degree Apprentice at the Automotive 30% Club, and I'm delighted to be hosting this Young Real Model Success Stories panel. Today, I'm joined by 4 amazing young women who will each speak to you about their personal career journeys, focusing on their own educational pathway and career routes to where they are now. For the second half of this session, we'll be inviting 8 students from the audience to ask the panel questions. Now, I'd firstly like to start by introducing Georgia Watt from Volvo Car UK. So Georgia, if you want to tell us a little more about yourself, please.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. So I am Georgia, I am the PR and events coordinator at Volvo Car UK. So my key responsibilities include promoting our product and our brand to journalists so that they have the opportunity to write reviews and publish our stories in things like magazines, social media posts and a variety of newspapers. So very, very diverse, really exciting opportunity, and I've been working at Volvo Car UK now for 1 year and 7 months. Thank you.
Fab. So that's some great insight, obviously, just into the role that you have at Volvo Car UK. So I'd now like to introduce Holly Ballantyne of CDK Global. So Holly, please go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi there, good morning everybody. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Holly, I'm 32 years old and I'm originally, you can probably tell, from Scotland, but I'm based in London now. The role that I currently work in for CDK Global is as Area Sales Manager. And what that basically means is I look after around 70 customers across the Southeast and Scotland as well. And really my key responsibilities are to ensure that those clients stay with us for the long term. So it's all about relationship management and really looking after them. So CDK Global, they are a tech business that deal with the dealer networks. So I've got a very close relationship with them. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about my experience with you. Thank you.
Fantastic. And we're looking forward to you sharing your experience as well. So again, some great insight into your role at CDK Global, and I'm sure you'll give us a bit more detail later on. Next up, we've got Taylor Colliver from Marshall Motor Group. So Taylor, I'll hand over to you now.
I'm Taylor, I'm 21 and I'm an apprentice mechanic. I've been here for 4 years now, working for Marshall Volvo. So yeah, just thank you for having us.
Fantastic. So obviously later on in the session, hopefully you'll be able to tell us a little more about your slightly different career route. And finally, please welcome Ronnie Ali from Auto Trader UK. So Ronnie, if you can tell us a bit more about your job role and perhaps some of the things that you get up to in your spare time.
Hello, thanks Sophie. Good morning everyone. Thank you again for having me and I hope you're looking forward to the rest of the day. So my name's Ronnie. I'm a delivery lead at Auto Trader, which means my role is pretty similar to a project manager's. I've been here for around 2 years now. And really what my role involves is making sure that I support as best I can with any products or initiatives that we're launching to car retailers to make sure that they've got all the tools that they need to succeed in their own roles. In my personal time, I love reading, I bake an absolute heap, I'm obsessed with Bake Off, and I love spending time with family and friends.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think you're not the only one that's a fan of Bake Off. So thanks for sharing your stories with us. All very different, but obviously still highlighting some of the many routes that there are for careers in the automotive industry. So I hope that our audience have found them interesting and inspiring. We're now going to move on to a Q&A session where I believe we've got 8 eager students who each want to ask you a question. I myself have got some questions as well. So I would firstly like to start with Trinity Academy and we've got Liliana Jenkins there. So Liliana, if you've got a question, if you'd like to ask that, please. We're just waiting for Trinity to come on there. We know they are here. It obviously just takes a while for stuff like this to happen in the new day and age. Trinity, are you there? Okay, so perhaps Trinity will be able to sort of ask a few questions later on in the day. But for now, I'll just jump in and I'll ask the question that Liliana was going to ask. And that is, why would you recommend your educational pathway to where you are now? So Taylor, I'd like to ask you that question first, if that's okay.
So I would recommend my pathway because before becoming an apprentice, I went to college for 2 years to do mechanical engineering and light vehicle maintenance. I feel this really helped me in kickstarting my career because it gave me a lot of valuable knowledge as to what I should be doing and how to do it correctly before starting as an apprentice straight away.
Fantastic, yeah. And I know obviously college is a great route for that. And how are you finding your apprenticeship? You enjoying everything with that at the minute? Because obviously the apprenticeship route is a route that I've taken myself, and it might be a route that some of our audience today might be looking at taking. So just sort of going off on a bit of a tangent, why would you recommend sort of an apprenticeship as the route to where it is that you want to be eventually?
I would recommend an apprenticeship because it helps you learn a lot more as you go along, and it helps you learn very in-depth information that you wouldn't necessarily learn every day to day on a job. You also have the guidance of somebody else with you to be able to let them teach you everything they're aware of, to help you guide you along the way rather than just going head first into a career that you're not really certain of.
Yeah, I think myself as an apprentice, just to sort of add to that slightly, obviously, as you say, working on the job, you know, it's fantastic. It's a great way of learning, but I think having that workplace mentor and having someone that's sort of been there and maybe done it, maybe the same route as you or maybe a different route, you know, it really helps. So thanks for that, Taylor. I'm now going to ask Holly. So Holly, I'll just remind you the question. So why would you recommend your educational pathway to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a great question. So thanks for asking it, Liliana. I guess for me, I would really recommend my route to industry because I had such an excellent support network within my university. So I went to university in Aberdeen, in the very, very northeast of Scotland, where it's super, super cold. So I went to Robert Gordon University, and I chose that university because it consistently ranked amongst the very top for graduate prospects. And I believe that a big part of their success was really because they worked so closely with industry. So what they did was, you know, they had a lot of partnerships with a lot of businesses across the whole of the UK, actually, who I suppose what they were trying to do was really, really promote them to encourage them to offer them internships and placements upon graduation. And there was a whole host of opportunities that were available to students of RGU, and that ranged from 12-month placements to 6-month placements. It was quite flexible. So for me in 2009, which seems like an awful long time ago now, I applied for a 12-month internship with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I suppose the main attraction really was that they promised that they would give me the skills that I needed to learn how to run a business. And for a 20-year-old, that gave me a lot of responsibility, and that really appealed to me. And I was curious to see if they could really live up to that promise. So following on from my 12-month internship at Enterprise, I then returned to university for my final year. And the really great thing about completing my placement with Enterprise was that they actually offered me a permanent position upon graduation. And that really took the pressure off and allowed me to concentrate on working really hard to get the best degree possible. And what was even better was that I was able to pick up where I left off after the 12 months and was actually promoted within 6 months of leaving university. So that would be why I'd recommend my route to industry.
Fantastic. Thanks, Holly. So yeah, again, that's it's a slightly different career route, and I suppose it's, you know, an internship type thing. It's slightly different to an apprenticeship, but they're also pretty similar in a lot of ways. I know I myself, as a degree apprentice, I go to Sheffield Hallam. So shout out to all the Sheffield crew out there. I know there's a few of us today. Again, they're sort of a leading university in degree apprenticeships and in internships. And I think it's really important that if you are sort of really interested in learning sort of on the job, you know, apprenticeships and internships are a great way of doing so. So thanks for that, Holly. So next question we have got from East Barnet, and we've got Tarnis Story Murray, I think. So we'll just wait to see if East Barnet are able to connect with us. Fantastic.
Okay.
East Barnet, please, or Tarnis, please go ahead when you're ready, please.
What is the biggest challenge you have faced in your current role?
And so thanks for that. I'm going to ask Georgia that question.
Hi everyone, fantastic question. And it's quite a difficult one to answer because when you're working in public relations, you get encountered with challenges on a regular basis. So public relations, to put it down to basics, is the communication between a brand and the public. So all of you guys, basically. So you could be in a crisis management situation, such as in the car industry, a recall, and you will be asked a lot of questions on behalf of, like, you know, journalists, which you have to answer, which is a high pressure situation. But you do it transparently, you do it honestly, and always, like, you know, with a level of decorum. But on a personal note, and I think that this is probably the biggest and most important challenge, is generating a healthy work-life balance. So it's really, really easy for you to be consumed with a lot of work, especially in busy periods. You know, you could, from my point of view, I could be running an event, I could be launching a campaign, and then doing day-to-day media analysis, which is a lot of responsibility and a lot of work in one day. So actually taking some time out to have time to yourself and do the things that you enjoy is so important, more so for your mental health well-being, and it does actually help you perform better in the workplace as well. When you feel rested, you feel recovered. And for me, the solution there is a healthy to-do list. So I love ticking things off my to-do list, but the most important thing is to not make that to-do list so long. So I remember back when I was at high school, you know, you go through a lot of examinations, you've got your GCSEs, then you've got your A-levels. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of pressure. So just my biggest advice would be just to be mindful and make sure that you actually have some time in the evening to actually do the things that you like to do, whether that's going out and doing sport, dancing, reading, baking. Make sure you factor in that time, because actually it's really important to rest and recover, and then you can go to, you know, your revision, like, you know, an hour, 2 hours in the evening. You can feel a little bit more, you know, focused and driven. So that would say that's probably my biggest challenge, and that's what I'm working on doing to combat it.
Fantastic. So that was a great question and a great answer. Thank you, Georgia. I think you will sort of vouch for this as well. Obviously, with you being in events, there's been a lot of change to every workplace this year. But I think events, you know, that sort of industry, it's impacted sort of significantly. You know, take, for example, today, it would have been great if we were all together today, but obviously we're now doing it virtually. So, you know, there's a lot of challenges that have been faced this year, as well as obviously the daily challenges that we face sort of every day in school life, in work life, that sort of thing. And you have got a fellow to-do lister here, and I'm sure there's quite a few in the audience as well. So our third question for today, we have got King Edward School from Sheffield, and we've got Sophie Hampton asking a question. So we'll just take a few minutes for King Edward's to unmute themselves. Have we got King Edward's there?
What is the biggest mistake and what did you learn from it?
And I'd like to ask Holly that question.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Sophie. I'll try to give you an honest answer here. I don't think anyone likes admitting their mistakes, but I'll give it a go. I'm not sure if this is my biggest mistake, but it's certainly one of many, and probably the most recent example that I could think to share with you. I recently had a request from a fairly long-standing client of mine for a copy of their contract. And in order to supply them with that information, first of all, I need to, sort of formally request it within my own business. And I suppose this is where the mistake starts. Rather than checking the client's contract thoroughly before I sent it on to the customer, I just assumed that it was accurate and correct, and simply sent it on. And it was pretty a not standard request. It was only then when my client actually advised that they wished to end certain items within their contract that it occurred to me that the information that had been sent to them was actually wrong, and they couldn't do that for another couple of years. So I suppose where I'm going with this is my key learnings from this example is that I should always be thorough and really own the conversation and the relationship with the customer, and not simply just assume that just because the information came from another team within my organization that it is automatically correct. I mean, it's ended well. Fortunately, I've been able to manage the situation, and the customer and the relationship has continued as normal. So it's normal to make mistakes, is what I want to say. And one thing I'd like to reassure you of is that it's completely natural. We're all human. It's how you learn from them that is the most important thing. And someone once told me that making mistakes allows us to sort of discover ourselves more, and in business this can be a really valuable lesson. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. That definitely does. And I'm quite a big believer in the fact that the key to success is actually failure. And I think that, whether you are at school, like our audience, or obviously in the workplace, whether it's that you're still on your apprenticeship, like myself and Taylor, there's mistakes that happen every day, even if it's in your personal life. And I think it's not necessarily the setback, it's obviously how you bounce back from that. So that's a fantastic answer. Thank you, Holly. And I think one that our audience will definitely be able to take forward and take advice from today. The next question we've got from Thomas Beckett, and we've got Samira asking that question.
Good morning from Thomas Beckett Catholic School. My name is Samira, and I have a question. What are the most useful skills to have in the world of work?
That was wonderful. Thank you, Samira. And I'd like to ask Rani that question, please.
Thank you for the question, Samira. It was very eloquently asked. There are probably two skills that I'd say are really useful for the world of work. So the first would be, I think, communication. And I think that's being really clear on what you're saying and getting across what it is, the sentiment that you need to get across. And I think that's important both in one-on-one conversations and then also in group settings. And I think there's an element of conversation which is maybe non-verbal, and it's being able to read the other person and understand sort of where their head's at, or understanding, what they're thinking based on their body language or the questions they're asking back of you. And the good thing about that skill is you don't have to wait until you're in a work environment to start practicing that, and you can start doing that now, really. The second one I'd say that has really served me well is being a hard worker and being dedicated. I think as a result of that, in my career today, I've been offered opportunities where between me and the person offering them, I might not be able to do 100% of the skills required of that role, but they have faith and trust in me that I'll work hard to make sure that once I start on that opportunity, I'll hit the ground running. So they're really two key ones. I'd say communication, regardless of any role or job or career that you go into, and being a hard worker will always serve you really well.
Thanks for that, Rani. And yeah, again, I definitely agree with that. And communication is something that obviously it's not necessarily just talking to an audience or something. There's many different forms of it. And yeah, really good answer. Thank you for that. Now I've got a question, and I'm going to ask this to Georgia. So Georgia, have you always been confident, or have you done something in order to improve your confidence?
I love this question, and I'll be very, very honest. No, I was never this confident. And, you know, when I look back at my high school self, I was very shy. I was very conscientious. I was very hardworking, but had really low self-confidence and low self-esteem. So much so that actually the stress of examinations often induced panic attacks. So in terms of combating this, I realized that I actually needed to do some self-development. And because I loved education so much, like I do, and I still love learning, and that's another skill to take into the workplace. You should never stop learning. You should never stop reading and developing. But because I actually really enjoyed that, I was quite fortunate that I knew I wanted to go to university. And when deciding my university placement, I was looking across the UK. So I'm from Staffordshire. So I looked at Keele University, which is close. But I thought, actually, if I've not got the same level of confidence in meeting new people, and I enjoy doing media, and I know I'm going to have to regularly meet up with people, and, you know, it's the world of networking and communication, then I need to challenge myself a little bit. So what I decided to do is move away from home for university. So I actually went to Bournemouth, and if anybody wants to know, it's 6 hours away from home for me. So a huge leap of faith, a huge challenge. And yeah, my first day at university, my mum and dad helped me unpack, and I was left to my own devices. And when you're put in that situation, you literally either talk to people or you are going to be sat in your room on your own. But actually being thrown into that situation and facing the challenge head on, I developed my confidence extremely quickly. And I really came out of my shell at university. Now, university isn't always the place where this happens. It could be the workplace. So if you get a part-time job at the age of 16 and you're dealing with customers on a regular basis, absolutely fantastic. That is really one way to build up your confidence and start talking to lots and lots of different types of people. So I think that the two things that I would say is that if you are anxious and you are concerned about speaking to people, is actually firstly put yourself in a situation where you're, like, you know, doing it more regularly. It's basically practice. And also, yeah, just having faith in yourself. You know, have the confidence in what you're saying. Like, we're all intelligent people, you know what you're talking about. So have the confidence to actually project it. So that's in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Thank you, Georgia. And yeah, again, I'd agree with that. I think pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you know, they say, don't they, life begins as soon as you leave your comfort zone. And I definitely think that's something that I've had to do sort of throughout my apprenticeship. Actually just sort of bringing the point back to just sort of explain a bit more to the audience. I started my apprenticeship around about 2 years ago now. And I actually did my first ever presentation to students at Trinity Academy. And at school, you know, throughout college and stuff like that, I really thought I was quite a confident person. I was quite bubbly. You know, I'd done sort of performances and stuff when I was at school throughout sort of my career up to that point. And then I was stood in front of this theatre of students who were all relying on me to tell them about careers in the automotive industry. And I just did not know what to do. I was having this nervous in my life. And I just think, you know, now it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that I love doing. But I do apologise if anyone from Trinity Academy saw me on that day, because I was so nervous. I was so nervous. And I think, although I thought, you know, I was a confident person, it was pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And I think you are right in saying, Georgia, that if you believe in yourself, you know, you're halfway there pretty much. And I think that's something for our audience to take away today. And I think even just saying it, you know, it's something that we might not all be as good at implementing as what we actually say we are. And I think, you know, if you do believe in yourself, then you are halfway there and you can pretty much achieve anything that you believe in. Thanks for that, Georgia. That was a really great question. So we've now got Henrietta from Sheffield Park Academy. So if Sheffield Park Academy, they'd like to unmute now, that would be fantastic.
I'm really sorry. I've had to step in at the last minute and I don't know what our question is. Because I've gone then, Henrietta's got one. Okay, go on then.
What advice do you give to young girls who want to be in the automobile business?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, so just for those that didn't hear it, And I'm going to sort of ask this question to all of you actually. So what advice would you give to young girls wanting to join the automotive sector? Thanks for that question. And I'd like Ronnie to go first on that one, please.
So I think one thing is events like this obviously help an absolute heap, and I know that the Automotive 30% Club do outreach activities as well, so I'd say staying in tune with that is a key part of it. The other is not to worry too much about the career choices, or maybe possibly the choices that you make in the run up to a career, sorry, I should say. Just because for me, for example, I loved humanities subjects, and then I went and got a degree in history. And at the time, if you'd asked me if I was working in the automotive industry, I'd say, well, no, because there's no way that I'm qualified for that. So I think one key thing to really bear in mind is not to worry too much, because there are so many pathways into this industry. And I think hopefully, even from the nature of us four being on this call and sharing our experiences with you and having such different backgrounds, show you that there's always a route in, and you've just got to look out for those opportunities.
Thanks for that, Ronnie. And I'm now going to ask Taylor.
So I would say just be very headstrong about you and yourself, because you don't want to come into an industry and then your confidence be completely knocked because you're unaware and you're surrounded by male dominant people. And like for me, I'm the only female in my work area. So you just need to be very headstrong and confident about what you're doing and how you're going to portray yourself and complete your work day to day.
Fantastic, Taylor. And again, that obviously goes back to sort of believing in yourself and believing that, you know, you've got the power to achieve anything, really. And Holly, we'll go to you now, please.
Thanks. Another really good question. I think just to echo exactly what Rani and Taylor have both said, there's so many different routes to industry. It doesn't have to be college or university. You can go straight into a career within automotive and work your way up progressively. Similarly to Rani, my degree was in retail management, and that is so broad. You could go into absolutely, well, retail is all around us. It doesn't necessarily have to be in automotive. So, you know, your skills are transferable, and, you know, exactly what Taylor said, you just need to really believe in yourself and know that you can do it. And yeah, my biggest piece of advice is just to you know, stretch yourself, you know, push yourself into those challenging situations and really go for it, because you can definitely do it.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, again, Holly, where you mentioned there about sort of transferable skills, you know, might be that you end up in the automotive sector. You might have not necessarily planned to have ended up in the automotive sector, but you know, there's job roles in sort of communication, surrounding sort of social media, those type of things. You know, there's the sorts of roles that Taylor does, which is sort of more the technical roles. And again, it's things that options that you might take at school, which you don't realise, but they're actually transferable to so many different industries. I know some of the options that I chose at sort of at school, when I was at college, they don't actually relate directly to automotive sort of in any way whatsoever. And sort of even the degree that I'm doing, it relates to business and it relates to my job role, but it doesn't necessarily relate to a job in the automotive sector. But you know, this is the industry that I found myself in, and I would I'd definitely say that I'd like to stay here, and hopefully you lot would as well. So Georgia, I'm going to finally ask that question to you, please.
No worries. So yeah, just kind of going off the same tangent, to be honest. So when I was at high school, my options were mathematics, stats, history, drama, and English, lit, and language. So, and every single one has come to play. It's fantastic. And then when I went on to A levels, when I was choosing those options, I just wanted to do something that I enjoyed. I wanted to pick the options. I wasn't too sure what career I was going in. I just knew that I wanted to go to university to do something that I was passionate about, that I enjoyed and was pretty good at, was all right at. I could tackle it. And as a result, I ended up picking maths statistics, media communications, performing arts, and English again. And again, every single one of those plays a job in my role now. So I do a lot of analysis. So I use a lot of Excel spreadsheets, a lot of data, but then I also have to be confident in the written communication side. So developing those skill sets, which I'm still doing as a professional, going on courses, learning how to write what we call a press release. So those type of comms. And then the performing arts side actually enabled me to be able to sit here and speak to you guys today. So, and to basically meet new people in the industry and do what we call networking and developing those personal skills. So my biggest advice would be do the things that you enjoy. And going off what the rest of the ladies said, I would never have said that I was going into the automotive industry. It wasn't until I went to university and decided to do a placement year that I started to look at all sorts of placements. And there were some fantastic opportunities in the automotive sector. Like every single brand was offering a placement year for students. And for me, who knows that it's challenging to get into media, it was a fantastic opportunity, and it's not one that you say no to. And I actually did it at Volvo. So where the workplace that I'm working at now is where I did my placement year. And the reason why I'm back here today was because I enjoyed it so much that after a year of working with towels and bed linen, because I did marketing in that area for a little while, I decided to ring up and ask if I could come back, at which point there was a job for me. So I have done the whole toing and fromming, and it's an industry that I'm very passionate about, and actually is really good at harnessing your skill set and helping you develop no matter what area you do, but always pick the subjects that you enjoy, because that's what you're gonna end up doing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Georgia. Again, I agree with sort of all of the points that have been brought up in that panel there, but I do think it's, pick something that you're passionate about. Some of the subjects that I chose, they don't relate directly to my job. Take, for example, sort of sports studies, that sort of thing. They don't relate directly to my job, but for mental well-being, it's a fantastic factor. And throughout school, my passion was business. I decided that I was passionate about business, and it was the one subject where I sort of thrived, where I felt that I came to life. And from a personal perspective, I didn't enjoy school that much. I was sort of a social bumpkin at school. I went to school simply for the social aspect. And if you've read any of my reports sort of back when I was in the sort of the lower years of secondary school, it was always, there's potential here, but she talks too much. And I think actually, having sort of spoke to women throughout the automotive industry in events such as today and wider, actually sometimes you can get a job that is predominantly talking, or is predominantly around that social aspect, around networking, and I think as soon as I found something like that, I was like, oh well, yeah, that's fine then. And I think it definitely is about doing something that you're passionate about, so that you don't always feel like you're coming to work. Sometimes you just feel like you're doing something that you enjoy for the good of others, and I think that's definitely something to look into. Obviously, if you're choosing your career options, or looking at obviously for some of our audience will be looking at the next stage in their career, so definitely. So this is sort of going off on a tangent, and Holly, I'd like to ask you this. But did you know what career you wanted to take when you were 15? Did you know what career it was that you wanted to pursue?
Absolutely not, if I'm completely honest with you. And I felt like it changed like the wind. I felt like the majority of my peers within high school really had it together, and they really knew exactly what they wanted to do, which, if I'm honest, really troubled me because I didn't. A lot of my friends were really set on, pursuing a career in education or medicine or law. And of course, you have to be very, specific about what subjects you take if you want to pursue any of those careers. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do at all. And I think I was probably a little bit lost. But what really helped me was actually chatting to some career advisors that were in my high school. That really helped me, I guess, focus my attention a little bit more. And I completely agree with what Georgia just said as well about, picking the subjects that you really enjoy. I think I kind of almost wish somebody had told me that when I was 15. And, you know, I didn't actually get the best grades when I was in high school. And I think I came out of high school probably still not quite knowing what I wanted to do. And I actually took a couple of years out between high school and university. And I had 3 part-time jobs that I was working whilst going to college for night classes, just to sort of get my grades up so that I could give myself the options that, you know, if I wanted to go to university, then perhaps I could, or, you know, equally, if I wanted to go into work, then yes, I could. And then it kind of came down to a bit of a crunch, actually. My parents were kind of like, okay, Holly, you really need to either get 1 full-time job, not 3. You need to get 1 full-time job, or you need to go to university. What's it going to be? And yeah, like my route to university, again, similar to Georgia as well. I'd never been to Aberdeen in my life before going to university there, and I sort of appeared not knowing a single person. And like what you said as well, you just kind of have to, you know, you push yourself out there, you make new friends, and I built a fantastic life up there, and I had the best time at university. I just loved it, absolutely loved it, personally and professionally. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But one thing I will say is don't be afraid of not knowing. It's okay to not know. I mean, I'm 32 now and I'm still figuring it out as well. So don't worry about it. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Holly. A very thorough answer, and I think that sort of covers everything. But yeah, I do think, you know, just to reiterate that message at the end there, don't worry if you don't know what it is that you want to do. You know, some people, they could be sort of towards the end of their career, and they would forever say, I never knew what I wanted to do. But you know, they've had a fantastic career, and it's something that they've eventually ended up sort of being passionate about. So yeah, I think the key message there is not to worry, but to just do things that you enjoy, because that's the key at the end of the day. And we're now going to go to East Barnet, and Ruby Bailey, I believe she's got a question. Okay, and go ahead and ask when you're ready, please.
How did you decide on GCSE options and post-16 courses?
And Rani, I'm going to ask you that first. I know we've sort of covered that slightly, but if you just want to go into a bit more detail, please.
Sure. So picking my GCSE options was made a little bit easier by the fact that my secondary school grouped different subjects into different bands. So you'd pick a subject from each one, and they'd be the 4 GCSE choices you take alongside your basic maths and sciences and things like that. And as I progressed to A-level, I always loved humanities subjects. So I went for history, English lit, and government and politics. And then for me personally, degree choice was a no-brainer. So I think I mentioned I absolutely love history, and I had really vivid memories from as far back as year 2 of history being my favourite subject, and then just loving it every year since. And then I've always had great teachers, which helped a lot as well. The one thing I would say is it's, Holly said it, Georgia said it, but I'll just echo it again. It can seem really daunting to, at this age, have to pick, you know, subjects that you think are going to influence your career later on down the line, but everything genuinely does work out okay in the end. And I think really what employers want to see is that you're hardworking and that you're determined, and whether you evidence that by choosing a traditional maybe pathway and going to university and doing a degree, or doing something a bit more vocational, that's all they really want to see. So I'd say, as hard as it might seem at the time, genuinely don't worry about it too much, because it will work itself out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is those transferable skills that sort of stick out for a lot of employers. Taylor, I'd just like to ask you that as well, please.
So when I was picking my GCSEs, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, pretty much the same as Holly. So I was very much clueless in a group of people that all had it down and knew exactly what they wanted. So surprisingly, I actually studied childcare and social care just to get me through them years, because, as I say, I was just open-minded to anything. It was only when I went to college that I was very much open to what I wanted to do, and it was advertised to me to do this industry and become an apprentice. and actually go into motor vehicle and broaden my horizons very much so. So that's when I took the first step into this job role and being an apprentice mechanic. So I went to college for 2 years. I actually got given a work placement to where I am today. So at Marshall Volvo. I did that for a week solid, and after that I come back and got my job here. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so again, just some insight into a role that's slightly different, more of a technical side of things. So thanks for that, Taylor. We've got a question from Maisie Marsh at Trinity Academy. And I'd like to ask Ronnie this. So what advice would you give to your 14-year-old self?
Thanks, Sophie. The advice I'd give to my 14-year-old self is easy to say with hindsight, but to try and be more confident and have more faith in myself. I think teenage years, so not just when you're 14, 15, all the way up to sort of on the cusp of your 20s, and secondary school as well, can be really difficult. And I think just sort of have faith in that other people around you and in your tutor groups and in sort of class groups are probably feeling the same way as well. So if you do feel a little bit like, I don't really fit in here, or I'm different because of X, Y, and Z, just have faith in yourself and the person you are, and what you bring that's different. So I'd say that. And then the other piece of advice would be, don't wear blue eyeshadow because it's not as cute as you think it is, because I was rocking that through all of year 9 and year 10, and I look back at the pictures and I just think, oh dear. So yeah, they're my 2 pieces of advice that I'd share.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. I think mine was eyeliner. Thick black eyeliner. It definitely wasn't a look. And the final question for this session, we've got from Holly Padden at Kettlethorpe School. So if Kettlethorpe are there, would you ask your question, please? Okay, that's fine. They don't seem to be there. So finally, just to wrap up this session, I'm going to ask Georgia, what would a career in the industry that why would a career in the industry that you work in be a good option to consider? Oh, you're on mute, Georgia.
On mute, there we go. Fantastic. Hi, okay, right, I think I'm back. That's a very good question. And the reason why I'd recommend this particular career is because it gets you talking to a lot of people. It's a good combination of creativity and insight and, strategy. So it's always really, really interesting. It's always changing. But for a career in the automotive sector as a whole, like we've touched on previously, there are so many different avenues and no pathways set in stone. So for instance, like I'm currently working in the communications department, but should I wish to transfer to a more marketing-based role, so looking at photography, video footage, campaign work, I have got that opportunity to do that. Just because I work in comms doesn't mean that I'm sat there. And even if I wanted to do finance, change my career completely, actually working for an organisation like this, they will help you facilitate that dream. So you can train, you can develop, you can, retrain as well. So it's a fantastic industry, and it's so innovative, it's so fast paced, it's always changing, and it's really enjoyable to work in. So that's why I'd recommend my career and considering one in the automotive sector too.
Fab, thank you, Georgia. So that wraps up our Young Real Model Success Stories panel for today. So what I'd just like to say is there've been some great questions with some great answers there. I'd like to thank Georgia, Holly, Taylor and Ronnie for taking part. It's been a great session and it's been great to hear your personal stories and hear advice on the questions that have been asked by our audience. It's most certainly inspired me as an apprentice, and I do hope that it's also inspired today's audience. So thank you so much.